But we begin with our top story. The controversial travel ban ordered into place by President Trump is on hold this morning. A federal judge in Seattle temporarily blocked the directive late Friday that prevented some refugees and foreign nationals from entering the U.S.
The restrictions affected 7 predominantly Muslim nations. But Friday's ruling said President Trump's order was unconstitutional. That cleared the way for travelers affected by the ban to board flights bound for the U.S. A White House statement called the judge's ruling outrageous. A later release retracted that word. The statement also said the president's order is lawful and appropriate. CBS Justice reporter Paula Reid is tracking the developments. Good morning, Paula.
Good morning. The judge's ruling makes it as if President Trump's executive order was never issued. The ruling is effective immediately, nationwide, and around the world, meaning that people who would have been blocked from entering the United States under the president's order are now free to at least try to make their way here.
It's obviously a historic decision and an important one for the rule of law.
Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson relaying the news on Friday, moments after Judge James Robart issued the ruling. Washington and Minnesota filed a suit against the Trump administration Monday. It was supported by Washington-based tech firms Amazon, Microsoft, and Expedia, who said the order harmed their operation. In Friday's ruling, Judge Robart, a George W. Bush appointee, seemed to agree, saying the executive order adversely affects the state's residents in the areas of employment, education, business, family relations, and freedom to travel.
It is not the loudest voice that prevails in a courtroom. It's the Constitution.
President Trump signed the order last Friday, saying it was necessary to keep the U.S. safe.
I'm establishing new vetting measures to keep radical Islamic terrorists out of the United States of America. We don't want them here.
When the travel ban was issued last Friday, it caused confusion at airports. People with valid immigration papers were detained by border agents and denied entry into the U.S. According to the State Department, as many as 60,000 people had their visas canceled. The order triggered widespread protests at airports across the country. Adding to the confusion last weekend, some federal agents reportedly refused to comply with the orders, temporarily blocking deportation of travelers affected by the ban. That's something Ferguson says he's not worried about.
Am I concerned that Homeland Security will not follow the judge's ruling? No. We're a nation of laws.
The Justice Department declined to file an emergency stay to the judge's order last night, but the White House says it will file a motion at the earliest possible time.
Paula, what happens next? Is this headed for the Supreme Court inevitably?
This could make it all the way to the Supreme Court, but right now it's important to note the White House, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, none of those agencies have said that they believe that this stops the enforcement of the ban. It seems that their strategy is to try to get this emergency stay, which would undo what the judge did yesterday and make it okay, make it legal for them to continue to enforce this executive order.
During the arguments, Paula, the attorneys opposing the administration used some of President Trump's own campaign rhetoric about Muslims against him. What did they say exactly?
They're trying to attack this ban on constitutional grounds. And what they're arguing is that this was intended to discriminate against people of the Muslim religion. And the judge seemed to buy into that. They discussed things that had been said on the campaign trail about Muslims. The judge also asked very pointed questions about how many people from those countries had actually committed terrorist attacks. It was clear that the judge believes there is merit to this argument that perhaps the executive order is unconstitutional.
It sounds like tens of thousands of people are caught in the crossfire here. We're hearing that as many as 60,000, possibly more, 60,000 people had their visas revoked. What happens to them?
Yes, no one knows at this point. That's the simple answer. They couldn't even get it straight yesterday with that number. There was a discrepancy between the State Department and the Department of Justice yesterday. And at this point, clearly, it's not clear how the White House interprets this order from a judge. It's not clear what happens to those people. All we can say is that it will be likely months before they really have an answer as to their status.
Paula Reid, thanks for the update.